なおばんテレビ
South. Why does horror always south? Why does horror always south? Why does horror always south?
Jasmine? I don't think the supernatural forces are answering.
Maybe we should answer it ourselves.
Good idea.
Let's talk CharaTalks.
Whether it's comics or novels, one of the most sought-after genres by publishers is horror. There's simply a higher percentage of horror manuscripts to be accepted rather than when you submit, say, adventure or drama. Jasmine, you're not gonna take your robe off?
Nope. This has its reasons, of course, because the horror genre tends to sell better and faster to a wider range of audience.
In horror, we know what to expect. We don't need to create strong or complex backstories for the audience to care about the characters. The stakes are already very clear from the beginning.
Fear. The universal emotion that every audience can relate to. That being said,
How universal is horror in terms of the industry?
there's a really strong contrast between how Eastern and Western creative industry approach the horror genre. Japanese horror tends to have a theme regarding underlying rejection of social progress, erosion of cultural values, and inescapable circumstances that entraps the protagonist, such as social pressure or economical conditions.
American horror, on the other hand, tends to revolve around the monsters as a representation of the other. Colette Balmain stated that the twin processes of the repulsion of the unknown and the desire to know become the underlying foundation of how these characters react to the presence of the other.
The best example, in my opinion, for this difference is the original Singapore-Hong Kong The Eye movie that was made in 2002 with its Western reboot counterpart that's made in 2008. The original The Eye more focused towards the belief and the cultural aspect of the supernatural world and how it affects the relationship, such as those with the family or with strangers that surrounding protagonists.
The Western counterpart, made in 2008, focuses more on the character's individual journey to make sense of the situation she is in.
Needless to say, these differences are driven by the social anxieties at play within the cultures this horror tradition development. Some cultures, mostly in the East, tend to be more anxious about how social progress erode cultural values.
While others, mostly in the West, play around with xenophobic fears of the society, and also the dangers of too much curiosity.
So, horror plays on the questions of morals. Good horror sells because it is always relevant to the moral anxiety of the society at that time.
This makes it very easy to relate to the characters in a horror story, even to the motive of the monsters. In fact, if you talk about horror as a genre in the character industry, what is more memorable are often the monsters, not the protagonists.
We have the classic ones that become the basic of the monster characters, such as Frankenstein's monsters,
Count Dracula,
mummies,
zombies.
werewolves, and so on. But let's talk a bit more about the Japanese horror masterpieces.
First, we have Godzilla and other kaiju or giant monsters. These usually play around the themes of the unwanted side effects of the progress of technology and how they corrupt nature. The solution, interestingly enough, is, you guessed it, more technology.
Another would be Tomie and other works by Junji Ito, explores the absurdity and grotesque detail in a familiar environment, especially in families, playing on audience expectations of how a horror would play out and then destroying it with plot twists.
Satoshi Kon's works, while not really about physical monsters, explores the horror in losing one's identity. Identity itself is a recurring theme, a recurring anxiety in Japanese society post-World War II, because it's related to their cultural integrity after losing the war and its subsequent westernization.
after that, we also have great memorable characters in Japanese horror games, such as Silent Hill. It has produced a very iconic antagonist, really horrific ones, such as the nurse and the Pyramid Head.
There's also Resident Evil. That is interesting because not only do they manage to create memorable antagonists, but also protagonists, with characters such as Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, and Ada Wong. Horror master Stephen King categorizes 3 types of scares. There's the gross out, where something weird and slimy slithers against your legs. Then there's the horrifying, where the monsters start attacking.
But truly great horror stories focuses on death is terrifying. When you come home and you find out that all of your stuff is being replaced by the exact same substitute, the exact same replica. It's when you just sit there and you feel as if there's something behind you. It's breathing slowly. It's crawling to you slowly, step by step. And as you turn around...
Horror industry flourishes not only because fear is a universal emotion, but because it was born in context of the social anxieties that people can relate to on a daily basis.
This is why Western and Eastern horror have their own way of storytelling technique and visual design. It's their very own characteristic, and it works really well because it's based on the audience itself and tradition.
While Western horror focuses more on the individual journey of a character to survive fear of the other, Eastern horror focuses more on how fear affects the relationship of a character in relation to his or her environment.
What was your experience with horror? Do you enjoy it, or do you avoid it at all costs?
Do you have a favorite horror title? Maybe manga, anime, film, novel, or games?
And what are you guys doing this Halloween?
Let us know in the comments.